Hey, welcome to Dan's Mod Works, and this is part 3 of our building a sleeper out of a Dodge Ram pickup truck. And of course, we're starting the easy way. We're starting with a high-performance truck. And we're doing everything we can to dull it down to somebody's old work truck that another certain somebody went and stuck a Viper engine into. So, what have we done thus far? The body. You can see that we have ground a bunch of rust holes in it on both sides. And basically what this is going to represent as the guy who dropped the Viper engine in it, when he bought the truck, let's say 3 or 4 years ago, he was maybe the second owner of the truck or the third owner of the truck, and it was already pretty well rusted by then. So with the best of intentions, he went to the wrecker and he found a bed that was in better shape, doors that were in better shape, front fenders that were in better shape. The colors didn't match, but he had the best of intentions. He was going to paint it all and make it all booful. Well, that was several years ago, and he never got around to repainting anything, and his replacement panels, of course, have been rusting like crazy, which brings the appearance of the truck to being a rainbow of different parts. And then he goes and sticks the Viper engine in because, well, people do strange things like that. So we'll get to our next step on this in a second. What we've also done is we've done the chassis here, and not a huge amount of changes here. I did end up raising the ride height by about 2.5 millimeters. It's not a huge increase, but the truck as it comes out of the box has a lowered stance. We don't want to bring it up to being a 4x4 because it quite clearly is not, but we want to have it more of being a standard pickup truck ride height. The engine has just been put in there as it comes from the box. The wheels, however, were sourced from basically the spare tire of a 1999 GMC pickup truck, and I made castings using latex and Alumilite to make these wheels, and they've been given a coat of semi-gloss black and then quite a bit of rust dry brushing on top, and you can see the same thing has happened on the underside here. So that is our chassis. Now you could argue used alloy wheels are probably a dime a dozen these days, and yeah, they are. But the Steelies just kind of sell it as being just somebody's down about the heels everyday work truck, which is what we want to go for here. We don't want anything to indicate that there's anything special going on under the hood. Now back to the body. Before I start painting the body, I want to remove this panel here. I want to separate that out. I'm going to fill in the notches. And I know a lot of stock Dodge pickup trucks come with these notches with the exhaust pipes popping out. But those are usually the ones that have got the performance options and are advertised as having the big Hemi and everything like that. There are plenty of others that have this as a plain steel bumper, no notches, and the exhausts coming out the side. Well, usually one side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to route the exhaust out into the side because I want to have the plain old full bumper on the back. So I'm going to be amputating this so I can work on this separately, and I'm going to be chroming it. But paint-wise, once I get that part amputated, I'm going to start painting the body, and I'm going to start with the lightest color, which is going to be on the front fenders. That's going to be yellow. And basically, I'm thinking those fenders probably came from some sort of a fleet truck or something. And then I'll move on to the other colors, masking as I go. Now, high on the list of things I should have done, or at least started a long time ago, is a rear bumper. I did some quick looking online at rear bumpers of Dodge pickup trucks of the sort of vintage we're looking at, and you've got some that are basically shaved bumpers. You've got a lot that are a nice curved automotive bumper which sits over top of the body panels. And then a few of them are kind of a heavy-duty work bumper like this. This is not a Dodge work bumper. This is actually off of a 93 Ford F-150. Now, given that Dodge rear pickup truck bumpers seem to rust out even faster than the body panels, it's interesting when you see a chrome bumper that's just basically tinfoil. It's all the steel is rusted away underneath the chrome. I figure, you know what, I'm going to use this one. And if we want to justify it as the original bumper was heavily rusted out and he just stuck this one on there, that's what I'm going to go with. So this bumper has just been tacked onto this piece of plastic here. The original lugs have been preserved. I'm going to pack some Play-Doh in underneath here, and then I'm going to start making a mold. The reason I say I should have started this earlier is, well, it takes a while to build up a mold. I've now got the masking on for the front doors, so I'm going to be painting this area here the next color, which is going to be blue, and I'm also going to paint the hood a blue as well. So now we're looking pretty hideous. We've got the blue on the cab roof and the sides and the rocker panels. I'm going to be masking that off, and I'm going to be painting the bed now. And I am going to be painting the inside of the bed semi-gloss black. I wanted that to look like he's got a bed liner in it. Or rather, the original owner of that bed did. So now we're ready to spray our last color. We've got the cab all masked off, and I've kind of tried to double check the original masking as much as possible. Okay, let's see how tragic this turned out. Alrighty. That's pretty mismatched. Like I said, a little bit of a bummer here. That got under the tape. Let's go fetch the hood. So there we are with the original blue hood. So the hood, as far as I can tell, are one of these things that doesn't rot out particularly badly. Yeah, like I said, that's a little bit of a too bad moment here. Well, I'm not going to complain too much. It basically looks like crap, which is the way it was supposed to look. This is something Natasha and I have discussed that's a bit of a difference when you're dealing with a kit of a modern car versus a classic car, in that most modern cars have this black surround on the windshield and sometimes on the side glass, and Revell is thoughtfully frosted that area, which makes it easy to put a piece of masking tape on and paint that area. As you can see, I've painted it flat back on the inside, and it's glossy on the outside, obviously, which is what you want from this sort of part. So I'm going to be taking off the masking tape, reapplying it on the top and bottom, and it's a two-step process, but it definitely is worth doing. Work has been progressing on our interior. I used deep navy blue for the flooring and an even deeper dark blue for the floor mat here. These areas are unpainted because this vehicle has separate side panels. The seat is also that darker blue. You can see how that looks right there. It has a little bit more of a sheen to it than the floor does because I figure this will probably be vinyl seats in this. And then we've got our dashboard right here. And it's basically in the same sort of color. I wanted that slightly glossy as well. Most of the buttons on a vehicle of this type are black, so there's not a whole lot of bright work here. And this area, of course, is where the steering wheel is going to be mounted. You may have suspected this was coming. These are the door panels, and they're definitely a dark brown reddish color. And that's because the doors on this particular truck came from a red truck. Now, somebody's going to say, you know, they just pop out. He could have put in the door panels from the original truck. Yeah, he could have. You know, this guy didn't have all the time in the world, and I mean, just judging by the fact he put new panels on, didn't even prime or repaint them, I'm sure he probably wouldn't have bothered with changing the door panels either. And it gives it more personality to have the door panels from the donor truck. With the exception of the gear shift, this is the interior all put together, and of course we can see the mismatched door panels here in kind of a deep maroon color, which would go with the metallic red. I think this pretty much nails the way I want it to look. I am going to be putting the gear shift in, but I'm not going to use the really special looking gear shift they give us. It's basically just going to be a knob on a stick. I've got the windshield all painted up with the surround and the sun visors done, plus the little console that goes up here. That's all done and ready to be glued in. And they also actually, interestingly enough, they give you a spot for the dome light, and they give you a dome light lens, which is kind of neat. This truck was actually set up to have the exhausts that poke right out through the back bumper, which is actually quite common for Dodge trucks. But I wanted something more plain Jane, so even though it does have a dual exhaust, I've basically custom bent some evergreen styrene to have them come out the sides, and I've hollowed out the ends, as you can see there. I know this robs the truck of some performance, but let's be honest, the guy who's driving this, he's not really out to blow people away. He just thinks it's a hoot that he's got a crappy old truck with a Viper engine in it. I've done some detail painting on our rainbow body here. I still haven't actually painted the rust in the holes yet, but I've done the trim line along here on the body. I'm coming down with the cold here, that's why my voice suddenly sounds different. What I did on the green, the blue, and the yellow is I just used flat black. On the red panel, I figured that these doors maybe came out of a more up-level Ram pickup truck. So what I did is I used a darkened gunmetal. I basically put a little bit of flat black in there to darken it up so it still has a bit of a metallic sheen to it. So I did the door handle, the rub strip, and the ram on both sides with that dark metallic. And as well, I've done the mirrors the same. As well, the back of the truck, I painted that flat black. It was Tester's flat black, which is very, very flat. And then I actually gave it a coat of dull coat to make it a little shinier. I know that seems counterintuitive, but the dull coat actually has a little bit more sheen to it. And the reason is bed liners are so common that I figured even on an older bed that's all rotted away on the outside, they could still have a decent bed liner in it. So, and the bed liners, you know, really don't show a huge amount of wear unless they've really been torn. Now, the tailgate, because it's come off of a yellow pickup truck, it's not going to have any bed liner in it. And it's really going to be chewed up on the inside. It's really going to be scratched up. So, that's how the body is coming along so far. As well, I've also done the trimmer on the windshield in semi-gloss black, as well as this piece right here that the hood sits on top of. Did that in semi-gloss as well. I'm working on my back bumper. Recall that this is actually a resin part that I've cast using a mold. I've actually have a Ford bumper, so I know it's not correct for a Dodge bumper, but what I wanted was just kind of a plain Jane working type bumper, and this is it. You can see I've been like working on the back side of it here because the bumper should be hollow, and of course a resin casting you're not going to get that, at least not with the primitive molding technology that I'm using. So I've just been dremeling the back of this out, and whenever you're doing this, I mean, you know, you're going to make sure you've got some eye protection and some breathing protection and stuff like that, so you're not breathing in this resin. Alright, quite a bit of toxic dust in the wind, but we've got this part cleaned up, at least thinned down to the point where I'm happy with it. It did have a little bit of a bow to it, probably because my mold was a little bit bent when I poured it, but what I did is I put it in some hot boiling water. Of course it's hot if it's boiling. Yeah, I think my cold is getting to me here. Anyway, I put it in some boiling water, pulled it out, and I straightened it up. So if you ever have a resin part that's a little warped, you can usually straighten it by putting it in boiling water. So this is ready to have some silver paint put on it and be mounted on the back of the frame. I wanted to have a spare tire and wheel floating around the back of the truck. So I've done one more casting of the Chevrolet wheel from that other Revell kit, and of course I've cleaned out the inside. Now this time, instead of, you know, putting little bits of rod in there to represent the lug nuts, what I've done is I've drilled out the middle, and I've drilled 5 holes in it in order to represent what we need here. So I'm going to be popping this into my remaining tire from the kit, and I'll paint this black once again and heavily rust it, and this can go in the bed. Now this is our front bumper, and it was an all-white part, but I've bare metal foiled this portion, and then this is semi-gloss black, bottom's German gray, and then these pockets here have been done with flat black as well. Then I've painted the back side of it there. Now I'm going to do a little bit of rust streaking on these, just to weather it up a little bit. There's our back bumper all done up, and once again I will be putting a little bit of rust on that. I know somebody in the comments is going to say, that's a forward bumper. Yes, it is. As I've already explained, it was just as quick to grab a forward bumper as it was to scratch build a Dodge one. The main thing is that it's a step style utility bumper, not one of those non-existent bumpers you often find on the back of pickup trucks. Along with the spare tire, which is soon to be very rusty, I'm also going to be throwing a few other things in the bed of the truck. We've got a 55-gallon oil drum. This is from AMT's C-Series stake truck. Now I've put a couple dents in it, because these things are hardly ever pristine. I've also got one of AMT's floor jacks. Now this was chrome. It's going to be painted, I don't know, red maybe. They seem to be red or blue most of the time, so that's going to be done up. I've also got a jerry can from the same kit, that's why it's chrome. Now I have done some modifications because the handle was way too thick. So that's been done. And one other thing I've got in here is the broom, once again from AMT's. Hard to focus on it here because it's such a small item. This once again is from AMT's stake truck. Now here's an idea you just know I'm going to regret. I used the size of the wiper blades on the model in conjunction with my least favorite tool, which of course is the Olfa circle cutter, to create these 2 masks. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slop a little very dilute cruddy paint on there, just enough so it looks a little scuzzy. So that way you can see that nobody's really made much of an effort to clean this windshield, other than what the windshield wipers have done themselves. So we'll see how horrible that looks. We also need a toolbox to go in the back of our truck. So this is my Toolbox Mold, I think made from the racer's wedge. I think that's what I ended up using to make the mold. So we'll just peel this. There we go. Sand the bottom off, give that a paint up, and one more thing to be rattling around the back of this guy's truck. So what I've got right here on my laptop is an image that I snapped on my phone. A bag, actually, a bunch of bags of safety salt. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to crop it, and then I'm going to print off this image, and I'm going to use it to wrap basically a 1/35 scale sandbag, so that I can recreate a little miniature bag of salt to throw on the back of the pickup truck. See how that turns out. What we have here is a sandbag from Tamiya, I believe, is the manufacturer, so it's 1/35 scale. And here is the image of our safety salt bag. Now, I originally was going to crop it right down to the edges of the image in the individual bag, and I thought, you know what? Let's just make it slightly oversized, and then I can wrap that extra bit around the back side of it. And it's all black and yellow, so that will hopefully end up, not looking too conspicuous as having no back side to it. The white glue I used to put the picture onto my sandbag has dried. If I flip it over, you can see there's the Tamiya sandbag. And I think it looks pretty good, all things considered. And a little bit of irregularity from the regular image basically makes it look kind of crinkled. So this is about ready to go into our bed. I think we're just about ready for final assembly on this. Finally being in that I'm finally getting around to it. Had a cold for most of January, so I haven't been working on this nearly as much as I'd like to, but let's get this thing wrapped up. And we are done. Our Dodge Ram as a sleeper is done. And I did everything I could to make it look at the part of a down at the heels, many owner truck. I'm thinking at least 3 owners. And as we rotate it around, hopefully you'll notice that this fender's got a 15 on it. The tailgate has a 7. And of course the other one has a 13. And that was done quite deliberately. I hope I'm not so absent-minded that I would use completely different numbers. But the way I'm thinking is the yellow panels, they probably came off of some retired fleet vehicles, possibly a municipality or something. And they were done with Letraset. And I was hoping that they weren't going to go on perfectly. And fortunately they didn't. You can see the ones kind of chipped off. And these sorts of numbers are usually self-adhesive, and they tend to get picked off and peeled off anyway. So, of course, it looks like just an average, ordinary, run-of-the-mill Dodge pickup truck until, of course, you look under the hood. And then we've got the Viper engine in there. And as promised, I didn't make it really, really disgusting. I just gave it a heavy wash of panel wash. I didn't go too crazy on it. And the engine bay, of course, is all painted up in semi-gloss black. Because when they transplanted the engine, they did actually repaint the engine bay. The contents of the bed, they probably slowed me down by about a week. Just because I kind of knew the sort of things I wanted to put in there, but it took time to kind of get off my butt and make them. This whole project would have been done about 2 weeks earlier if I hadn't have had that nagging cold that kind of knocked the wind out of my sails. I think you can see the clean spots on the windshield from where I put the masking tape on. Yeah, if I turn it just like this, you can see you've got those clean areas from the wipers. Suppose the only thing I wanted to do this that I didn't is I was thinking of making the seats kind of all torn and ratty. I just never got around to it. I was also thinking of putting a little box of Timbits in there, but I have a history of making things more complicated than I need to, and I really wanted to get this project done. Here's a shot of the underside, and you can see how I've routed the exhausts out to the side. And I didn't put tons and tons of weathering on the underside, mostly just put a fair amount of rust dry brushing on it. I did give the bed a wash of basically some khaki and some brown, just in order to, scuzzy it up a bit. And if I turn it like this, you can see that the tailgate, which of course came off of a truck without a bed liner, is pretty scraped and rusty. Because, I mean, let's face it, most things get taken in and out of a pickup truck by dragging it across that tailgate. So I think that's entirely appropriate. I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. Building it as a show truck was never something that had me very enthusiastic. I always wanted to do it as a work truck, and kind of saying that, okay, this is a sleeper. It looks like it's just an average work truck, but the guy has put in a Viper engine that he, got from the wrecker or an insurance sale or something like that. I think is kind of a neat backstory. So I hope everyone enjoyed our building a Ram truck as a sleeper. And I hope it didn't take too long. I don't seem to be able to get a project done in under about 2 or 3 months. I don't know, something about working every day of the week or something. I don't know. Chronic fatigue syndrome or something. So, thanks for watching, and until next time, just keep on modeling.